give me any technology and I can find a good use for it or a bad use for it. We don't ask whether a hammer is good or bad. And AI is in that class as a technology. The question is, who are we going to be as a people as we use it?
I guess it's the old adage when I was a kid growing up, computers, garbage in, garbage out. That's still true. Whatever information is put into it, it will output in a certain way. And the bias of the programmers will come in, whatever that is. And that's actually concerns me on the job side too. Like I said earlier about predictive technology of who should be doing what jobs or who's allowed to do what jobs. Jobs that are replaced that require human consideration, such as I know that right now that AI is used to predict like when medical supplies or food is distributed across the globe for needs. Well, it'll say, okay, distribute so much to Africa or put this much to India or whatever. So if you're using AI for that, well, what are the biases of the programmers? There's certain people, think about your when you have a medical procedure and they say, oh, well, the analytics say that you're too old to get this procedure. The money's, you're not worth that procedure. So my concern about replacing jobs is more that the humanity is lost in the job itself. I mean, at least that's one side of the concerns, that the human decision-making process factors in things that those systems won't be able to factor in or will be programmed with certain biases against certain human beings or certain groups of human beings that we can't compensate for. And people not knowing that the bias is built in will assume, oh, well, that's just AI. It must be doing the right, morally good thing, right? We assume that because it's remove the emotion and the emotional element, somehow pure reason has led to the right moral end. It's Spock or the Vulcan, sort of thing. Without emotions, we'll get to the right solution. So that's my concern in that whole side is when we give up those jobs, we assume it's making a moral decision. But yeah, I think the other thing we're not getting is that for humans to do the higher order jobs require us to start with the lower entry level jobs. Just like Bloom's taxonomy, students have to learn how to memorize, how to understand before they can move to the higher levels of applying, analyzing, evaluating, and being creative. You don't just start at the higher level jobs. You have to work your way towards those by learning the skills at the lower end jobs. And it reminds me of that movie Wall-E, the little robot thing, and those people are flying off to inhabit a new planet because we destroyed this one. And they're in these, ships that are all controlled by the robots and they're all fat and in the little things floating around and they can't even get out of their chairs because they've never moved, right? They can't even press a button because they don't know how. It's just like, the stuff they can't do because they've been so dulled in their capacities by the AI. And so that's the part that's a real problem too. It's not that, yeah, we could compensate, we could find other jobs for people to do, but the problem is those certain entry-level jobs are a part of human development of intelligence and capacities and skills. So it's not just like magically, well, we'll just do the jobs they're not doing. That doesn't understand how humanity itself learns and grows.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this is rooted and grounded in your theological view of humanity. And if you truly believe what the Bible says, that part of the way that God has built the system in us, that he's programmed us from the beginning, that work is connected to our sense of purpose and well-being. We have to truly believe that. And that when people lose the ability to participate in culture building and to participate in building something meaningful and ruling and reigning and governing on God's behalf, that person will become injured. It's injurious to their soul. And that, we're already experiencing unprecedented levels of depression and anxiety, particularly since COVID, when so many people were locked down. Our anthropology, our theology of humanity tells us this is what a human person is. This is what it's designed to do. But if our technology gets to a point where, we're not able to participate according to God's design, we could run into real psychological problems with humanity. So this is something, not to completely scare us about, but that we need to be thinking about and how we're developing the technology. And Jeff, maybe you can comment on this of, any technology, has, well, I shouldn't say any, but many technologies have the potential for good or for evil, depending on the intent of the human heart that utilizes that technology or develops that technology. And so that's all the more important that Christians are involved in this conversation, wouldn't you say?
No, that's absolutely right. And, we tend to have this idea that we can ask, oh, is this good technology or bad technology? And quite honestly, give me any technology and I can find a good use for it or a bad use for it. We don't ask whether a hammer is good or bad. I can go tear down my neighbor's stuff with a hammer, or I can use it to build something that I couldn't if I just had my hands, if you will. And so every technology, and AI is in that class as a technology. The question is, who are we going to be as a people as we use it? And Joe listed some of the ways that the biases show up. And even if you were to have a program that didn't have biases built in, all of it is trained on data. And the data is just going to have the inherent biases of the people who generated the data. People have biases. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about in there, and I think we need to be very careful how we do we allow the technology to make decisions, or do we make sure we're using the technology and driving decisions? Because there are going to be lots of pressures to use it in the medical field. It can detect tumors better than many doctors can. But if we allow the AI to decide what's going on without the human oversight, we're going to become victims of the idea that we think the AI is thinking like us, when in reality, it's finding patterns and correlations. And so we need to be making sure that as humans, we're using the AI as a tool, not allowing the tool to form who we become as people. And just as you mentioned, if we don't think that people are valuable, if we don't think that work is valuable, if we don't think that relationships are valuable, more likely than not, the AI is going to diminish the value of people. It's going to diminish the value of work, and it's going to diminish the value of our relationships. And that's going to be pretty catastrophic. So I think it's very important we're thinking, how are we being formed as people so that we can use this technology well?
So interesting, because what I hear you saying in that is making sure that we keep the first things first, looking at a first ordered way of doing life, and not putting a machine before a person, not allowing mechanics to dictate our morality, and
keeping the human level of the decision making is critical.
It is. Yeah. It is, because for us as believers, there is a way in which our morality is ordered, in which our thinking is ordered. There's a very distinct way in which we do life that machinery, doesn't offer us, one. But then two, I would even say, and this is probably just my skeptical nature, but, even thinking about the people who are creating the machinery, the people who are doing the data and the inputting and all of that, like, what is their worldview? How are they viewing the human person?
Yeah.
And all of that.
Because all of that's going to potentially come through in the programming.